I'd like to say a word today about the Catholic sacrament of reconciliation, or as it was often called, confession. In fact, it is called by some people confession now. I think we fasten on the word confession because there's something odd in human nature that we always go for the negative. We fasten on the negative thing. It's a bit like the story of the prodigal son in the Gospel. It's not about the son at all. You read the story in St. Luke's Gospel. It's in chapter 15. The story is about the father. He's got the two sons. One walks out on him, wastes all his money, and he welcomes him back. And for us that's nonsense. I mean, at least you ought to tell him off. And then the other son behaves like us. He gets annoyed, making a fuss of somebody who's done everything wrong. The point of the story is the father celebrating that he's got his son back. And the point of the story isn't about the son going wrong. And we're a bit the same. We pass on confession of sins, whereas the main point is reconciliation, coming close and coming back to God. Same thing, you know, Pope Francis wrote a letter recently on the mercy of God. We can't see God, but in Jesus we see God in human terms, full of kindness, compassion, what they call mercy. Most people would read the letter, skip that first part about the mercy of God and get on to about us being merciful. But the point is to see the mercy and the kindness of God. And that's what the sacrament of reconciliation is about. Like the father in the story saying, it's my party, let me celebrate. Let God celebrate when any one of us comes back to him. You know, the sacrament has changed radically once or twice in the history of the church. When they first had it, see, Jesus had said to the apostles, whose sins you shall forgive, they are forgiven. And after Jesus ascended to heaven, they said, oh, what does that mean? What are we supposed to do? And it was decided really that if somebody left Christ, turned away from him, turned his back on God, left the church and everything, he could be welcomed back. Nothing was too hard. Welcome back once, possibly stretching a point a couple of times. And they got a jolly big penance when they did. But as time went on, a number of people said, well, I haven't left God like that. I really love our Lord, I always have, but I still keep doing things wrong. And I want a sacrament asking for forgiveness and healing. And that was about the 10th century. Then it started coming in. People would go much more often about smaller things. Well, it got to the stage when I was a boy, and we took this as perfectly natural, I would go to confession every week with my friends. Trot out probably with the same list as before. It was always behind a screen. They said the priest doesn't know who you are. He used to sometimes give me a message to pass on to my mother, because he did. And we just came in and we said a list of things. People of my generation will remember that. I heard one story about a little boy came in and said, I missed my morning night prayers, I told lies, and I threw peanuts in the river. It's unusual. Anyway, another little boy came in and said, I was disobedient and I hurt my sister and I threw peanuts in the river. Then another boy came in and said, I didn't pray enough and I was naughty and I threw peanuts in the river. Now when the fourth boy came in, the priest, he didn't say it, he just said, I hit my sister and I said a rude word. The priest couldn't resist saying, did you throw peanuts in the river? A little boy said, no, Father, I am peanuts. But we used to just produce a list like that. But it was a way of coming to Christ. We said, I would say, I'm wrong on this and I'm wrong on that. But now, recently in my lifetime, the whole pattern again has changed. People don't go nearly as often to the Sacrament of Reconciliation anymore. Might be every few months or once or twice a year. But when they go, they don't expect just to trot out a list. A person will come and talk about how things are. And it may be simply saying, I haven't trusted our Lord enough. Or might say, Father, I've got 2 or 3 children, they drive me mad. I get so impatient, I love them to bits, but trying to put into words what in my life brings me to God and what gets in the way. They could talk about that. But the whole point then comes, I am coming closer to the Lord. That's what we mean by being reconciled. When a couple have had a row, if they can be reconciled. I tried to get a picture of this for our parish newsletter, and the only picture I could get is a man and woman hugging each other after they'd had a row. And that's what it is. Christ hugging me, and my reaching out to Christ. Can you imagine or picture, recall, when you had a row, a nasty row, with someone you really love? Can you? I find it very difficult to put into words the hurt that could go with that. But Caroline Duffy has a poem which for me expresses that. See if it rings a bell with you. When we rowed, the room swayed and sank down on its knees. The air hurt and purpled like a bruise, and the sun banged at the gates and in the sky and fled. But when we rowed, the trees wept and threw away their leaves. The day ripped the hours from our lives. The sheets and pillows shredded themselves on the bed. But when we rowed, our mouths knew no kiss, no kiss, no kiss. Our hearts were jagged stones in our fists. The garden sprouted bones grown from the dead. But when we rowed, your face was blanked like a page erased of words. My hands squeezed themselves, burned like verbs. Love turned and ran and cowered in our heads. And after that, if only you could hug each other and come close together. And that's what this sacrament is. When I've had a row with Christ. Well, sometimes it isn't a big flaming row. It's not something terrible I've done. I've drifted away. Not to trust him or not to love him. And I really want to come back and say, I do love you. I'm sorry I haven't shown it. That's what the sacrament is. And here Jesus say, yes, I know, my darling, I know you love me. And it's lovely to hear it. Christ would say, it's lovely to hear it. I could almost, take that poem to say it to Jesus. Jesus, when we rowed, the room swayed and sank down on its knees. The air hurt and purpled like a bruise. The sun banged at the gate in the sky and fled. Jesus, when we rowed, the trees wept and threw away their leaves. The day ripped hours from our lives. Sheets and pillows shredded themselves on the bed. Oh, Jesus, when we rowed, our mouths knew no kiss, no kiss, no kiss. Our hearts were jagged stones in our fists. The garden sprouted bones grown from the dead. Oh, Jesus, when we rowed, your face blanked like a page erased from words. My hands squeezed themselves, burned like verbs. Love turned and ran and cowered in my head. And when I've come like that to Christ, what I need is a reconciliation. And when we come, he forgets the hurt. He's just glad of the hug of coming back together. And this is called a healing sacrament. The church has two healing sacraments. One is with anointing with oil for people who are physically ill. But this is healing in mind and heart and spirit when I've been depressed or turned away, or even when I'd had a row with someone who's not Christ. Oh, I know they say the sacrament gets rid of sins. It's not what it gets rid of that matters. It's what it gives us. If I poured you out a glass of wine, I could say, I'm getting rid of the air from the glass. Well, so what? It's what you put into it I'm interested in. And the same with this sacrament. I celebrate coming to Christ. I may be conscious of things I've done wrong. I may just be aware that I haven't shown my love as much as I really mean it to. But it's like the father in the story. Let's celebrate. And this be a wonderful image. Years ago, my little niece said to me, "Are you coming to my first confession?" Well, we don't invite people to our confession. It's a pity we can't, because we don't want them to hear our faults. But to be able to express it to God and say, I know I've done wrong, or rather I've been wrong. I have loved you all the time, and I want to. I want to celebrate. But more important than that, allow Christ our Lord to celebrate. We go to a priest in the sacrament. It doesn't matter if he's good or bad, it doesn't matter. He says the words, but it is Christ present who reaches out and touches us and holds us. Allow our Lord to do that. And don't be as we sometimes are when we've had a row. Nobody's going to make the first step to come back. Christ has made the first step, but we need to accept it and walk towards him. It's a wonderful gift, and we do need to celebrate so that no matter what has gone wrong, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm in love with Christ, and he's in love with me. God bless you. Allow Christ our Lord to hug you.